in response to the lawlessness of the previous administration, both BRICS, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, and many others are seeking alternative payment methods that are not tied to the dollar, thereby protecting themselves from Washington's arbitrariness. This process can no longer be stopped, and there are statistics showing what the share of the dollar in global trade and international financial settlements looks like now. It's not because we wanted to run away from the dollar. President Putin has emphasized this more than once.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov has brushed off recent threats from U.S. President Donald Trump, targeting BRICS and its push for de-dollarization. At a press conference, Lavrov declared, "It's not our profession to be worried, so we're not worried about anything." His remarks came in response to Trump's warning that the U.S. would push back hard against BRICS expansion and the global move away from the dollar. Lavrov emphasized that de-dollarization is no longer a theory, but an unstoppable reality already in motion. He said countries across Latin America, Asia, and beyond are seeking alternative systems to avoid, in his words, the arbitrariness of Washington. Lavrov also recalled that Trump himself had previously criticized the Biden administration for using the dollar as a weapon, a move that, he claimed, damaged global trust in the currency. He insisted that BRICS nations remain sovereign and committed to fair international principles, despite U.S. pressure. According to Lavrov, Washington's rhetoric only reveals growing unease over the dollar's fading dominance in global trade.
You mentioned that Moscow wants to understand where Trump's statements are coming from. And actually, even before Trump, American Senator Lindsey Graham said pretty much the same thing, that Russia, well, actually Brazil, China, and India are playing into Putin's hands. And you have already stated that Moscow does not possess any particular significant concerns about its various partners, but I truly wanted to inquire, is there any genuine potential for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, or the BRICS group to undertake joint coordinated action regarding, well, this specific kind of emerging threat?
Well, since there have been specific threats coming from Washington directed at BRICS, saying that BRICS needs to be fought against, that BRICS undermines the interests of the United States. But to be fair, I have to say, earlier, President Trump expressed a somewhat different point of view. He said directly that the actions taken by the Biden administration, using the dollar as a weapon, have caused irreparable damage to the reputation of this global reserve currency. And I am sure that he understands the fairness of that assessment. And the fact that, in response to the lawlessness of the previous administration, both BRICS, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, and many others are seeking alternative payment methods that are not tied to the dollar, thereby protecting themselves from Washington's arbitrariness. This process can no longer be stopped, and there are statistics showing what the share of the dollar in global trade and international financial settlements looks like now. It's not because we wanted to run away from the dollar. President Putin has emphasized this more than once. It was the dollar that was chosen as a tool to punish those whose behavior Americans consider inconsistent with those very same infamous rules by which they want to maintain the entire world order. But if we're talking seriously about concerns, our profession is not to be afraid. Our profession is to ensure that Russian interests are taken into account, to work openly and honestly, based on international law and agreed upon principles. A self-respecting, strong, and independent state simply cannot act otherwise. And we have, I want to emphasize this once again, every reason to believe that the states that are part of BRICS are also sovereign and value their position in the global system.
The organizers say, next network, so we have two final questions. Please. Nikolai Ivanov, Izvestia International Research Center. Sergey Viktorovich, American media claim that the United States is now literally forcing its allies Japan and Australia to decide how they will help Taiwan in the event of a conflict. In parallel, the United States and allies from 18 countries are beginning the largest exercises in Australia. Tens of thousands of military personnel are involved there. What do you think is behind this new surge of tension in the region?
Well, it's not a new surge. It might be a new phase of the very same surge that began quite a few years ago when the United States put forward the idea of developing and implementing the so-called Indo-Pacific strategies. By Indo-Pacific, they actually mean the Asia-Pacific region, which has always been called that and has never suffered because of it. But the Indo-Pacific strategy symbolized NATO countries' desire to expand their infrastructure into the Far East, into the Southeast Asian and Northeast Asian regions, to create alliances there with a nuclear component, like the AUKUS alliance, United States, Britain, and Australia, or the trio of the US, South Korea, and Japan, who are conducting increasingly frequent and large-scale exercises, also with a nuclear element. And there are many others, like the so-called Indo-Pacific Four, overseen by the United States, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. And all of this is accompanied by NATO infrastructure moving eastward, including in such dangerous forms as the transfer of intermediate and shorter-range missiles to the Philippines, land-based missiles that were previously banned by the Russian-American Treaty. This is a very, very serious weapon that will appear for the first time in Southeast Asia. It's also moving into Europe, including Germany, by the way. So the whole process reflects NATO's aggressive eastward expansion. They wanted to absorb Ukraine, stumbled, but continue to pretend that they will definitely see it through to the end. And at the same time, as they use Ukraine as the spearhead of their attacks against Russia, although these attacks are becoming less and less noticeable. At the same time, they are also advancing eastward, so their desire is to ensure NATO control over the security situation across the entire Eurasian continent, instead of the constructive alternatives that we, the People's Republic of China, and our other allies and like-minded partners are promoting, namely, the creation, as I have already said, of an architecture of Eurasian security that is open, equal, and provides for the participation of all continental countries of Eurasia without exception. That's it. Now, specifically about Taiwan. You know, there are more and more speculations and provocations regarding the Taiwan issue. For example, not so long ago, when someone from the journalists drew President Macron's attention to the logic I just described, he said something along the lines of, NATO will not interfere in Asian affairs if China ensures that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea does not interfere in European affairs.